Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Green Triumph session. Let's clear up a few things first. Let's start with the fact that Green Triumph is a green tea. I need to clear that up because in a minute, we're going to be talking about a lot of things and the fact that we're starting this new set of sessions with a green tea when in fact, we're about to edge into raw black. But there's a reason for what we're doing today. There's a couple very important reasons for what we're doing today. So let's first clarify any errors or any missed or messed up thoughts that I created by mislabeling the packages. Because I sent all of you the tea tastings, and the boss said to be very careful when you're putting dates and names and so forth. And I got distracted, wasn't wearing linen, and then mislabeled everything. So all the rest of the year, every single date of the tea and the tea tasting is wrong. And it's off by a week. So it says on your package that on July 5th, we should be doing Green Triumph. Well, everything is going to be a week later. It's July 12th today. We're starting the second half of the year's tea tastings, and that was just a mislabel that carried through the entire session. So that's out of the way. And you all knew that I hadn't had one of these enormous mistakes yet this year. So now you're feeling comfortable because mid-year I have an enormous mistake, and the rest of the year should travel with only small errors. All right, the next thing I sent, for those of you who just got up, I sent maps today because I want to place us. But before I place us, again, let's talk about why we are starting with Green Triumph instead of a raw black today, even though we're edging into raw black sessions. Reason being is that green tea and raw black are very close. And so we want to talk about those differences as we start the raw black sessions. And we do that by starting out with a green tea. The other reason that today's session is going to be special is because you're going to be challenged. And let me tell you right now how you're going to be challenged. There's something different about this tea. I can't even remember what it is. But if one of you says what it is, it'll suddenly pop into my memory. Oh, yeah, that's true. Now, you're not going to know until you taste it. So no guesses before you start tasting, because I'm going to have to say that's impossible since you didn't taste it. All right, so that's cleared up. So why are we doing a Hubei tea instead of Anhui or even a Fujian green or a Zhejiang green? Well, we don't do many Hubei greens, but they're one of the largest green tea producers. They're in central China. So why don't you take a look at the two maps? There is an overall map of where Hubei is in relationship all to the entirety of China. So it's centrally located. The north is Hunan. To the west is Sichuan. To the south, you've got Hunan. So it's very, and Anhui also borders on the east. Very centrally located. Most people who don't live in China forget Hubei is a major producing tea province. Thousands of acres devoted to tea, and the majority of their tea is green tea, although they also do produce a bit of fermented tea. But it's the green tea for which they're best known, and we're having a Hubei green tea today, Green Triumph. Then let's look at the second map. The second map is the province of Hubei, broken down by county and by its capital city. So its capital city is Wuhan. And Wuhan, if you look in the center and just slightly to the right, it's right there, Wuhan. What is Wuhan, aside from the capital city? It's a collection of three cities. Originally, it was Hankou, Wuchang, and Hanyang. And those three cities all together made up, eventually, what's today called Wuhan. Enormous city. It's probably got, I don't know, 15 million people in that city. It's quite large. And geographically, if you want to think about it in comparison to the US, it's kind of like the Chicago of China, if you want to try and get yourself situated. So it's centrally located. What runs through the center of Wuhan? That's very important. It's the Yangtze River. The Yangtze River, in 1957, the Chinese constructed the first modern bridge over the Yangtze River in Wuhan. And the river is really, really big there. When you take the boat from Chongqing and go down the Yangtze, this is where you get off in Wuhan. So, and you see the Three Gorges Dam and so forth. I did that before that dam was built, and it's really a beautiful and interesting boat ride. Nonetheless, let's get away from boats and let's get back to tea here. This is where, this is how the look and feel of Hubei is from a county perspective. Now you notice there's another county close to Wuhan called Tianmen, Tianmen. This is where the famous writer during the Tang Dynasty, Lu Yu, was born. So he grew up here, appreciated tea here. Obviously, at that time, Tang Dynasty, 618 to 960 or so, it was only green tea. But this is where he had his seminal experiences in terms of green tea and learning about tea. Wuhan historically has been a place where poets and other artists have congregated. So it's well known from a historical perspective. But that's not where we're going to end up today. We're going to go west. And there's a county called Anshi, E-N-S-H-I. It's the furthest western county. And it's actually kind of a little south too. So Hunan borders it, and lots of tea is grown in this particular county. The Wufang Mountains are in this county, and that's where today's tea comes from. So that kind of gets you situated. It lets you know, oh, let's give you rankings, because it's always fun to have rankings. Hubei, from a total tea production standpoint, ranks as the fourth largest producer in China. I know all of you are thinking, okay, what are the first three? The first three are all three southwestern provinces. So Yunnan, and that shouldn't feel strange to you because we've talked about all the tea mountains in Yunnan, all the explored and unexplored places in Yunnan that produce tea. Sichuan, we've talked about Sichuan a little bit, and we haven't talked about the extent to which they produce tea, but they're a huge producing province, and Guangxi. And we've absolutely almost zero talked about Guangxi, except in relationship to omnipresent, because we get the wild osmanthus flowers from Guangxi. But it also produces all sorts of tea. Most of the tea from Guangxi is more market tea. and that's why you don't see it here. But it's a beautiful area. It's remote. It's hard to get to places, and it's just the infrastructure is just different than the other provinces. So those three provinces outproduce Hubei, but Hubei is the first, it's number 4. It's the first after that. So it's actually producing a huge amount of tea. And again, most of it's green tea. And most of you don't ever hear about Hubei and don't usually think about Hubei as a big tea producing province. So this will lead you to naturally ask, Lisa, I'll shortcut the question, well, maybe the province is only producing market tea. And nothing could be further from the truth. They are producing some fabulous teas, but most of them are smaller crop teas. So they don't have the famousness outside of Hubei for the most part. Today's tea does have some famousness about it. So that gives you kind of a situational feel for why we're in Hubei, what Hubei looks like. So let's remind ourselves again what the process of doing green tea is. Generally, some way you're going to pick it. Generally, some way you're going to wither for a very short time. Generally, some way you're going to denature the oxidation enzyme. Generally, some way you're going to make it aesthetic. And lastly, you're going to make sure that the water content, the moisture content gets down to a certain level. These things every farmer is going to do, or every production facility is going to do. How does this differ from raw black? Raw black, you're going to pick. Okay, so that sounds pretty similar. You're going to wither. Ooh, that's very similar, except you're going to wither a lot longer with raw black. You're going to wither instead of on the order of minutes, you're going to wither on the order of hours. You want the tea leaves to have much more pliability to it. Okay, you're going to denature to a degree the oxidation enzyme. However, you're not going to use the same temperature that green tea uses. Green tea generally is going to try to be at a higher temperature. You're probably going to try and do it for longer than you would for raw black. Then with raw black, for sure, you focus on aesthetics. Sometimes with green tea, you focus on aesthetics, probably about 80% of the time, but there is a small percentage, say 15 to 20%, where it's done at the same time as you're denaturing the oxidation enzyme. Lastly, for green tea, we said we're going to reduce the moisture down to 4 or 5%. What are we going to do? And that's using a heat source to do that, a heat source that isn't the sun. With the raw black, you use the sun to dry the tea. And you have what is called Maocha, M-A-O-C-H-A, which I call 70% complete tea. Sometimes you see all sorts of naming conventions for that. But really, what it is a gateway. It's gateway tea. After you sun dry, the farmer has choices. They can either decide to keep it as a raw black, in which case they're going to dry it until the moisture level is at the right level, and that is down there to 4 to 5%. And since they're sun drying, it takes a long time. Again, hours versus minutes for green tea. So there's some differences right there right away. And so I want you to kind of picture this as we're going forward, not so much today, but as we go forward next week, because there's confusion sometimes about, well, isn't this green tea? Why should we call it raw black instead of green tea? I mean, let's make it simple, folks. Next week, we'll talk about why we won't make it simple, because there are other things going on with the raw black, particularly in the last bit of sun drying. And that's going to distinguish it very clearly from green tea. So, as a reminder, let's go through, and I know it seems late to be going through this process like this. When we first started the green tea, I went quickly through the process. I want to kind of quickly go through it again. And I did just lay out the principles, but the reason I want to do it is because by the time you come to the baking portion, you are finished. And once you get it down to 4 to 5% of moisture, you're finished. And basically, you might sort. And what are you sorting? You're sorting things that don't belong in there. And then you package. Generally speaking, that's how green teas go. Green teas, as we know, have a bigger range of flavors than most people realize. And we've experienced that during these 6 weeks, and today, week 7. And again, you're going to have an experience today for which you're going to make some explanations to me about why it's the way it is. And then we'll talk about the reasons that it's the way it is. All right, what else should we know about this area? It's heavily indigenous people. So it's two groups, the Miao and the Tujiao. So they all have different dress, clothing, customs, really cool. When they pick the tea, they actually sing in the fields. It's very fun to walk, and then all of a sudden you hear, and it's mostly women, by the way, who are picking. Not entirely, but I'd say about 95% are women, and they're all singing. And as far as I can tell, these songs are about life in the countryside. They tend to be songs about some love songs, apparently, songs about tea and its contribution to their society and so forth. All sorts of songs. No matter whether you understand a word of Miao or Tunjiang, it's just absolutely beautiful. Nice. And you hear kind of over the tea fields. The first time I heard it, I thought, oh my God, these gals are all singing. And what's that about? And it turns out that this is a cultural thing. It's not, you certainly wouldn't hear the Han people generally in their areas when they're picking the tea singing. They're not singing. They're talking, but they're not singing. So it's just a different rhythm, and it feels happier, at least to an outsider's ear. It feels like everybody is somehow more socially engaged. So that's another characteristic of this particular area. So I want to leave enough time. Where am I on time? I'm not worried.
We're at about 10 minutes to 10.
10 minutes to 10. Okay. All right. I think I want to start this a little early because our tasting of this, because there's a specific thing I'm looking for from you in terms of evaluation. This is really kind of the first big test in terms of evaluation of what you're tasting. And there will be something that I'm hoping you'll be able to pick up and then kind of think about how come it's that way. All right, so it's time for a commercial break. I'll see you in 10 seconds. I'm still walking over there, just walking very slowly. Oh, and who's in front of me? The beautiful numinous tea master. Oh my God, truly beautiful today. Everything sparkly and blue and
You-
just wonderful.
Your linens.
Oh, and I'm wearing them, yeah, which is that to be telling you the truth. Okay, and without further ado, the tea master is going to show you how to brew this tea. Biju.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Yes. I do 绿茶 is green tea. Okay, jump off me.
Yes, so usual setup, glasses, strainer, tea toy. And turn him around. And the reason we have three here is to more quickly dissipate the steam. Heating the glasses, you can use any temperature of water from 170 to 212 when you heat the glasses and make sure that they're absolutely clean, no stains on them or anything.
No, no.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
true. I have
So
forgotten.
learned,
about that.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, Tea Master as usual is expertly outfitted, and she's actually wearing something from the Miaozu when we were in that area. I had completely forgotten about that until she reminded me just now. So this is one of the things you can see them wearing. And huh? Yeah, so what's important about this particular tea is going to be that the lower the temperature is. And we're still aiming for about 170, but if you're down there between 165 and 170, you're great. You're great with this tea. And as an aside, while she's preparing, yeah, I failed to mention last week, and I meant to, that we've had some wonderful inventions by our tea customers and enthusiasts in other areas of cooking and culinary inventions or culinary achievements. So I want to point out Rob's olive oil cake was just incredible. He did a couple of those last week. I forgot to mention those during the course of the program last week. They were really good. On the same day that, or no, the same week, Jen made olive oil ice cream, which was also really good. So we've got really some really unusual and creative culinary experts. And in a way, it makes sense because all of these things are craft things that we're talking about. And it takes a lot of different effort, a lot of attention to detail, just like this tea does. All right. Boss is picking up Green Triumph. It's 4 grams. She's heated the cup. Tea leaves in the cup. See how they're distributed over the cup. Adding the water. Okay, and this is a 2-minute steeping. So there's some things that you'll notice right away. And I'm not giving away anything. These are things that are very obvious. You notice all the leaves are at the bottom. we've seen all these weeks some sort of distribution from leaves at the top, some of the leaves at the top, some at the bottom, sometimes a lot of leaves at the top and a few have just fallen to the bottom, standing up. This is the first one that we've seen where everything's at the bottom. So that's one of the things that right away is a little bit different. Also, as you look at this, one of the things that you'll note is that there's an incredible amount of trichomes in this. So trichomes, as a reminder to all of you, are those little white hairs that serve as pest combatants or deterrents, because when pests eat those or bite on the trichomes, they get the equivalent of what is a bitter taste, and then they stop eating. Yes.
Peter asks, whether leaves all sink to the bottom or not, is that mostly dependent on how tightly the leaves are rolled?
There are many factors. This is a great question. So Peter asked, all right, let's figure this out. Is it because the tea leaves are rolled tightly that they fall to the bottom? Or is there something else at play? And so it's a combination of factors. Not all the tea leaves have the same density. So that's one factor. How tightly you roll things can be yet another factor. And then there's something else which you're going to discover and you're going to tell me. Timer went off. Tea master using tea master rhythm, not in a hurry, very deliberate, separating the tea water from the tea leaves. Ooh, this is kind of beautiful. Wow. Talk about a foggy day. This is fog in a teacup. Amazing. Well, let's enter the, no, you don't enter the quality review. I will enter the quality review. Let's see what this is. Okay. And let's go ahead and take that first sip and ascertain astringency. Okay, I've got that. Looking at aftertaste, I'm going to now focus on confirming my initial impressions and then seeing flavor and aroma. And by the way, I haven't forgotten about energetics. Energetics are very important. And it was a huge laugh to me this morning, or actually last night. I was looking at an article on tea, and it was, I forget who the author was, and they were talking over and over again about cha-chi. I'm thinking, okay, a Western audience has zero possibility of understanding what's really referred to here because we don't live referencing cha-chi. Really, it's the energetics, how you feel after you drink the tea. All right, it's your turn to brew. Let's see what happens here. I'm excited to hear your impressions because you need to tell me something about this tea. Let's see if we can identify that something. This tea, I'm going to give you a clue, is totally unique in China for this one factor. Tea master and all of you are getting your water ready. You're being careful to make sure it's on the lower end. At 165 to 170. cooling the water. And then, by the way, now to help you with clues, that's one of the reasons that the tea master is using so many cups, because she wants to make sure that that temperature is down there. Wonder why that is. Scan the tea leaves. Nice and dainty tea leaves. Not in a hurry, just very rhythmically adding the water, making sure it was down at that temperature. Doing this very, very beautiful pour where right away all these trichomes jump off the leaves and make a ball in the cup. Just totally beautiful. Oh, I forgot to set. No, I said something. All right. So while we are thinking about this, remembering, and I'm going to give you a clue, and Peter actually inadvertently gave you a clue as well, that coolness here, that 165 to 170 is really important for this tea. And again, when you taste it, you're going to have a certain sense of the taste. And as you think of the taste, think of the elements that go into tea and see if you can determine why this tea is so special, because it is unique in China and it's unique for this time. So clue number 3.
You know, in the pictures, the photos you sent out a couple of days ago, there's one that shows a plain, looks like a broad open plain, and you can see a little bit of mountain in the distance. And then another one that seems to show that wherever you're standing, you're up at some elevation. What is the typical elevation where the teas are?
Great question. This is the Wufeng Mountains, and the elevation ranges from, let's see, 3, 4. It ranges from about 1,000 feet above sea level from where this tea came from to about 1,800 feet above sea level. So it's not like Lake Tahoe elevation. This is a lower elevation. It's not the Yellow Mountains. It's a smaller set of mountains. Timer goes off. And you're getting ready to enter the quality arena. And you're looking at this fog in the cup. And that's stimulating some thinking. So take your time as you think about all the elements of this, including astringency. So start with astringency and think about this, because there's something different in this astringency as well. So let's see if we can identify the differences and then think about why there are differences. And you know, oh, go ahead.
Kathy comments, is that a special ask? Is that a special temple on the hill in the third photo you see?
It is a temple in the hills, and it is a I think it is a Buddhist, although I could be wrong. I've not been to that temple. And actually, just to give you a little bit more insights, almost everywhere we go in the Tea Mountains, wherever the mountains are, there are temples. And some temples, by the way, aren't Buddhist or Taoist. They're devoted to local luminaries who either help the region or are somehow connected to tea. So that's why, as I was just thinking about this, I don't think it's a Buddhist temple. I think it's actually devoted to a local luminary, and you see them all over China. And if I had time to go visit everyone, I would. I usually don't because they're on a higher elevation. Means you got to walk a long ways, and usually we're on schedules. It's funny, in the early years, we used to go to all of those, but once we grokked what the symbolism was, we stopped paying as much attention. But whenever we take customers to the area, then we do try and make a point of going to at least one or two of these temples because they're fascinating. Whether they're Buddhist, Taoist, or local luminaries, they are fascinating. The figurines all have a history. Some of the carvings and etchings are extremely elaborate. Some are not. Some you can tell were done by local people who may not have had much access to materials or experience. So the first thing to think about before we think about any mysteries is whether you like this tea and why. Or if you don't like it, why that?
Jeannie says the steeped leaves give me a strong artichoke aroma.
Okay, so Jeannie starts off with a strong artichoke / vegetal aroma. And that's a fine comment. Let me smell these leaves. Oh yeah, that's a very fine comment. Yes, I concur. Yeah, that's a
And
I haven't heard that before, but that's why I went and smelt it again. Yeah, on the money. Very, very nice comment. And also get out your notes from the previous 6 sessions because this is different than the previous 6 sessions. And really asking yourself what might lead to a difference. And again, paying attention to the small clues that have been offered up. Yes.
Peter Sheriff. Elusive at first, but I can sense it's all there. This is an interesting astringency, almost like the dryness reminds me of the tracest amounts of bitterness. But at the same time, here's a really interesting juiciness that wraps under the side of my tongue, and also a lingering astringency. Above all, a truly interesting grounding grounding through tranquility.
Peter, I love this comment for a bunch of reasons. And I want to go through it carefully because you're bumping up against some of the factors which truly do make this tea unique. And you have almost stepped squarely into what might be the cause. All right, so let's talk about it. First off, Peter identifies a groundingness and a calmingness to this tea. So that's good. We've had other teas that have been grounding and good. And he talks about elusiveness. Stringency is a little hard to pick up, and then it's there. So that's a little different because we're used to astringency a little quicker. So that's really good. But so far, we haven't bumped up yet against a critical point. But Peter's about to. He said, oh, and there is, I hate using this word because usually we get punished when we use this word. But I'm going to take a chance anyway. A little bitterness, and then he quickly modified, but it's juicy. Love the way you played with that. And now you're bumping up against, you squarely bumped up against a clue about something about this tea. And once you start to think about that specific comment, then with all the other clues, you can start to think about how was this made differently? Yes.
Rob shares, the warm leaves give me a sense of umami with a hint of spice. The steeped leaves had a hint of florality. The tea water smelled of umami with a hint of ocean.
Umami, ocean, that would be the steep leaves, hint of florality in the, do I have that backwards? I did it backwards.
In the tea water itself,
Okay.
the umami and hint of ocean, and then the steep leaves have the hint of florality, but we start with umami and the aroma.
Okay, my bad. The dry leaves, umami, the steep leaves, hint of florality and spice, and then the actual taste has umaminess to it. And Rob is also now beginning to bump up against, although it's not as obvious as Peter's, this is still getting towards what's different about this tea. So great catch on that, Rob. And as you're putting all of these things together, keep thinking about, maybe this was made differently.
Rob then adds, the flavor is astringent up front, but strangely, I had thoughts of mint, but that mint flavor is elusive.
So Rob is also mystified by, he grouped astringency and a flavor together. And so there's some mystery going on here with the tongue feel. And presumably part of the mint can be, or the mint flavor can be part of an aftertaste that Rob is detecting. But remember, he didn't say that. This is how he's grouping it together. Words matter here, and the order matters, and how everybody is detecting it. Well, this is good. It's juicy. It's umami. It's green tea. Ooh, and I whisper under my breath, yeah, a little bitter. And where are we going with this? Yeah.
Jen shares, elusive is a recurring theme here for me as well. Super light scent of something steamed and green was more faint than I was expecting, and I actually double checked the brewing time to make sure I had steeped it enough. The tea water is light, but medium astringency that leaves my mouth fuzzy as it cools. And then the flavor is a warm but very mild profile of greens, and it's definitely not overly grassy. I'm having a difficult time putting my finger on the flavor. Maybe squash blossoms, a hint of corn as it sits longer, captures that the greens, and then a light florality at the end I'm picking up. Also getting something more savory in the foundation, but I can't pin it down.
Okay. Jen's comment is a huge old great comment that also bumps up. All of you are getting closer, and she's the closest yet. So let's link this back first to Jeannie, because Jeannie said, okay, give me the artichoke. The wet leaves, give me the artichoke. I'm feeling vegetal and I'm feeling some of that. Peter, yeah, there's a little bitterness and juiciness. Rob, umami, yeah, slight hint of florality in the tea. And Jin says, you know what? This is making me feel like steamed, I assume, vegetables.
Steamed, yeah, something steamed.
Something steamed?
Something
Okay.
steamed and green.
Something steamed and green. And then she goes through an elaborate discussion about there is some hint of florality. What else have I
Some
missed?
astringency.
That's right.
Medium astringency.
Medium astringency, and at the very end, she said something
Something more savory in the
yeah.
foundation.
Savory in the foundation. So actually, in the combination of every one of these comments, particularly Jin's last comment, you have now revealed the secret. Even though you don't realize you've revealed the secret, you have revealed the secret. So think about this one more minute and see if you can come to some conclusions about this. And if you don't in this minute, I'll just tell you straight off what the situation is.
While people ponder, let me share two more comments that have popped up. Jeannie says, definitely cooling aftertaste. I thought I got mint in the first sip, didn't trust myself on that. Then Rob comments, the aftertaste astringency lasts longer than any other tea I've had.
Cooling aftertaste, almost a hint of mint from Jeannie. And Rob talks about a prolonged astringency, longer than any other that he's had with green tea. Yes.
And he said, just added, white pepper popped into my head. I'm glad it's not garlic, but white pepper just popped into my head. Okay, that's his comment.
See, Rob is really good because he knows where the guardrails are. Let's see, I can't say garlic, so I'm not going to do that, but white pepper. And I actually like the white pepper because it's a suggestion, especially when you grind it finely, it's a suggestion that something else is stimulating back there. So I love that comment. Good job.
Peter says, okay, going to guess here. This is green that's veering into raw black, but not quite there. It's straddling both genres, so there are more qualities of juicy floral as would be in a black, but not as much in a green.
Okay, so Peter talks about this straddling green tea in raw black. Not as much floral is what he says, but definitely there was a
qualities of juicy floral.
Juicy floral, okay. All right. These are all great comments. Let's think history a minute. Let's think history. I'm wondering if maybe a different historical process was used to produce this tea. I'm just wondering. What do you all think? And remembering that Peter bumped up against it with the whispered bitter, but juicy. And then Jin hit it squarely in her comment without realizing it. History is a strong clue. You need to know where in history. Chinese history is long history. I can all tell you psychically saying, where in this 5,000 years of history should I be digging through? Well, let's dig through the early Tang Dynasty. In fact, let's go back to 772. Now are we all on board?
Jennifer says, I'm guessing your pondering is informed. Cindy asks, I'm thinking low altitude near the ocean, lots of bugs, so lots of trichomes. And, oh, Mr. Cook, are they still steaming in Hubei, not pan?
Oh my God, somebody got it.
And then Stacey almost simultaneously was like, is this steam?
That's exactly right. Jonathan and who?
Stacey.
Stacy got, yes, both of you got it simultaneously. Is it steam? Yes. One of the only green teas in China currently still steamed. For those who have ever drunk Japanese green tea, I'm not talking about matcha either, Gyokuro, this has a very close relationship with Gyokuro. Both are steamed. The process is a little bit different with Gyokuro because you also have some shading, which you don't have with this. But it's the steamed quality of this that changes everything. When you have Japanese teas, first off, especially Gyokuro and all of those that are steamed, lower temperatures. You have to have lower temperatures. And frequently, part of the tasting profile is, oh my God, a little bitter.
And Jennifer says, steam just like artichokes.
Steam just like artichokes. All of you were around it. And I congratulate you all because all of you knew something was up. And your comments reflected something was up, even without actually understanding what it was that was up. But this is unique among Chinese teas because they kept this process going. This process is thousands of years old going. They still do it. What they don't do, and that stopped probably in 1392, was they don't make cakes of this. So this is loosely, but they were still steaming. And actually, they steamed green tea. Let's back up. This say this correctly. So they, by and large, only steamed green tea until the Sung Dynasty, so around 1100. And then they made that conversion for palate reasons, probably, to frying. And by the time you got to the Ming Dynasty, 1368, steaming was essentially gone. It was all about the fry. And yet, in this one region, this one tea, still steamed.
Rob says, did this tea spend time strapped to a mule on the tea horse roads?
That's a great question. So this tea has an additional history, and Hubei, it's related to the history of Hubei province, because when the Soviets and the Chinese were all friendly, a lot of tea from Hubei ended up in the Soviet Union. When they became unfriendly, all of a sudden, many of these teas kind of went away. But when the tea renaissance occurred in the 1980s, all of a sudden, these started to come back. And the Chinese population got more interested in all of these unusual teas. And the aficionados started identifying, oh my God, this is different. This is good. I love this thing. And it's taken off.
Jennifer asks, is the steaming one of the factors then that leads to it staying at the bottom of the cup rather than floating?
Probably. So the question is, and in relationship to Peter asking this question, why did all the leaves fall to the bottom? We believe that steaming is one of the issues. We also think because this is a smaller leaf varietal, we think that that also creates a certain density, which encourages this to fall to the bottom. But in addition to that, we believe if it had been roasted, half would have fallen to the bottom, half would have stayed on top. on top. So we think steaming was the number one issue. So again, all of you, it's really fun to hang out with you guys on Saturday because you're so smart. And nothing I can say surprises you. You always figure it out, and you did today. So congratulations. And this is how we really wanted to end up. So we thought about the order of these sessions, these 7 sessions. And we knew we wanted this transition into raw black, but we also knew we wanted you to experience something different than the previous 6 that is still clearly green tea. It's a beautiful green tea, hence green triumph. Yes.
Rob says, to me, gyokuro smells and tastes like freshly cut grass.
Mm.
This tea neither tastes or smells like a lawn. I like this much better than gyokuro.
Love this comparison, Rob. Rob says gyokuro to him tastes like freshly mowed grass. Why? It's because it's shaded. This tea is not shaded. It's artificially shaded. You know, they use these black cloths and cover all the bushes, and so the chlorophyll content is altered by them shading it. These aren't shaded. These, come on, sunlight, make me great. And that's why the flavor of this is so rich. And I prefer this to gyokuro too. I mean, a good gyokuro is very pleasant, but for my particular taste, I would take this every time. As usual, I live with the greatest tea aficionados in the world. And all of you were great today as you explored this tea and thought about, why is this different? We've enjoyed going through this green tea series with you because green tea is kind of a centerpiece for us. We have green tea every day. And again, contrary to previous malicious reports which say that we only love Cliff Tea and don't love our other children, those are lies and more lies. We also love our green tea, and we love the variety that's in this green tea. So I'm glad we got a chance to share this with you. You guys have a responsibility during this next week, because next week from Green Triumph, we're going to go to Forest Reserve, which is a raw black. And then we'll end up in this 3-week package seeking refuge. Well, we won't be seeking refuge. We'll be looking at refuge. So your responsibility, keep healthy this week. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care now, and great job. Bye-bye.